Let's talk history and economics. Hi, I'm John McNeil, and this is the Invest Strong Network. Welcome. So, as any and all Invest Strong viewer know, I am a huge history guy. And in fact, history, economics, and finance, that intersection of these particular subject matters, is kind of my specialty, right? Now, I what I wanted to do in this particular vid is to take a broad sweep of human history and to really get an idea of where we are at in the stream of time. Now, in this modern period that we live in, our system of finance and economics is just so entirely different than anything else human beings have experienced over the last 7,000 years or so. Now, uh, anyone who knows me personally know that I am a huge Bible reader, right? And when you read the Bible, you get a wonderful window into the lives of ancient people. Now, if you are a reader of the gospel text, as am I, then you notice that the divergence between the rich and the poor is one of the primary subject matters that Jesus and his apostles spoke about. Now, that world is really rather difficult for us to understand, but really that particular system of economics that existed in ancient times basically carried over all the way until roughly the early part of the 19th century, right? So, up until really the, shall we say, 1830s or so, almost all of human wealth, certainly in the Western world, and when I say the Western world, I mean Western Europe and North America in particular, the world that most Invest Strong viewers would be a part of, that wealth was denominated in land holdings, the agricultural products that came from land holdings, precious metals, and slaves. Now, here in the United States of America, this was particularly so. You had guys like these gentlemen, the actual founding parents of the country, right? Persons like Madison, Jefferson, Washington, who were considered fabulously wealthy by the standards of their time because they owned massive amounts of land, mostly in Virginia, right? But in fact, they had virtually no money, and thus they had to utilize slave labor to work their fields to uh, produce the agricultural product needed to maintain their lifestyle, right? So liquidity became a primary uh, issue for most of human history, as trade was mostly done either by barter or for persons who had money. Money was actually transferred by way of coins, right? But these coins would have different value depending upon which city you were in or which merchant you were trying to do business with. This was just a terrible system, right? And one that was given to the abuse of the lower classes. And in fact, when you look at this structure, really from biblical times all the way until the 1830s, uh, the overwhelming majority of wealth was concentrated in the hands of the elites. And when I say the elites, I mean basically either the monarchs or the aristocracy or persons who were able to become fabulously wealthy within this very narrowly illiquid system. Now, by the 1830s, 40s, things began to change, and in fact, change rather dramatically. Because, see, by this point, industry and industrial production began to replace the agricultural economy, right? Now, in order for industry to flourish, it needed advanced transportation systems, it needed machinery, it needed all of these things that would require massive amounts of liquidity, and thus confluent to the development of the industrial economy, why a remaking of the financial structure had to be done. So now the ability to raise capital and to utilize capital became all important. Liquidity began to increase, and really by the early part of the 20th century, the wealth that human beings held began to look very different than the wealth that was held, say, a century earlier. So now, although land holdings still made up a large percentage of individual wealth, now it became much more of industrial ownership, stocks, debt ownership, and actually currency itself, hard currency. That actually began to make up most people's wealth. And in fact, slavery in most parts had been outlawed, rightfully so. And this system provided for the building of factories, the payment of laborers, and the overall growth of the economy. Still, there was a problem, and that is up until the early 20th century, the overwhelming majority of these assets, land, stocks, debt, even currency, were still owned by the elites and the upper classes. Now, that made it very difficult for the working class, the poor, to advance. So a different system had to be created. And in fact, a different system was created. So in 1913, here in the United States of America, the Federal Reserve System was created. And this Federal Reserve System, the central bank of the US, really was to network with other central banks throughout the world and really create a global financial system which would allow for liquidity to be spread throughout the developed world, right? So now persons who previously were locked out of capital ownership could now have some access to it. And in fact, the system worked quite well. So really beginning in the early 20th century until, let's say, the post-World War II period, you had a system where most wealth was delineated in stocks, bonds being debt instruments, of course, and real estate, with precious metal and currencies as follow-ups to that, right? Okay, that was good and certainly moving in the right direction. However, still, the overwhelming majority of wealth was concentrated in the hands of the upper middle class, the upper classes, and the elites, right? The current system that we live in right now and we operate in every day is basically a post-World War II construct. Now, this construct it has really changed everything as it relates to human economics, right? So now, via the utilization of technology, we have access, and when I say we, I mean just about everyone has access to stock ownership, debt ownership, bonds, real estate ownership, either directly or through REITs or crowdfunding of real estate. Also, even precious metals, agricultural products, other commodities which can be owned and traded through options and commodity trades and futures, and even cryptocurrency, which can be exchanged electronically. Liquidity is all everything in the current day world. And everyone from the super elite billionaires all the way down to Brother John Wader in Houston, Texas, can participate in this system and in fact reap pretty substantial profits from doing it, right? Now, here's the point. This system is unique to this period of time, right? So we have the opportunity to take advantage of it. Let's do it. Companies industrial companies, financial companies, others that offer stock. You can have a part of their profits through dividends, no matter how small. You can invest in them and begin to build your wealth that way. This is something that was unthinkable up until really the post World War II period. And actually, because of the leveraging of technology, really in the last 30 years, being able to do it affordably uh, has finally come about, right? So let's utilize it. And you can trade or own just about any kind of asset, commodity, and either make profits from it, trade it, whatever it takes, and you can build your wealth that way. This was something unthinkable in previous eons. All right, so that's just something to think about, and I had been thinking about this a lot over the last few weeks, and so I thought I would present it to you. All right. So if you appreciated it, please, by all means, hit that thumbs up button. I would appreciate it, and leave a comment. Let me know where you think we are in the grand sweep of history and where you would like us to go. That would be even better. Also, of course, come on now. You know what I'm going to ask. Subscribe. Subscribe to Invest Strong. All right. Thank you so much, friends, and good blessings.